So the next item on the agenda is the public participation, and first of all the public forum. Could I welcome Reverend John McClister, Chairperson, and Reverend Lance Lucan on behalf of the Seafarers Welfare Board for New Zealand, who are going to present on seafarers' welfare. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa. My colleague, the Reverend Lance Lucan, and myself wish to thank the Mayor and Council for allowing the Seafarer Welfare Board for New Zealand to say a few words relating to the standard of care for seafarers arriving in the Port of Lyttelton. The Seafarers Welfare Board is the body responsible for coordinating the promotion of seafarers' welfare around New Zealand. And we are New Zealand's national welfare board in accordance with the Maritime Labour Convention. Last night I saw the trailer of a new TV series called Catch-22, and there may be a few councillors around the table who have read the book. Its title became a phrase which was used to describe a paradoxical situation from which an individual cannot escape because of contrary rules and limitations. Lance and I sometimes feel we are caught in a catch-22 situation in our advocacy for the care of the thousands of seafarers who arrive in New Zealand ports annually. On the one hand, the New Zealand government signed an international agreement that safeguards the rights of seafarers in one of the most highly exploitive occupations. The agreement that protects them says that after weeks at sea, you should be able to go ashore to a port-based welfare centre to get some well-needed rest and recreation, connect to the Wi-Fi to chat to your wife and kids, and most importantly, if you haven't been paid for 4 months, as the crew of one ship in Lyttelton last month hadn't, there is a trained professional at the welfare centre that can help you. Well, you should be able to get these services and protections, but in Lyttelton, for most seafarers, for most of the time, you can't. Lyttelton has a seafarers centre, but limited by funding, can only open for short periods. The situation in Lyttelton could be easily improved by following the Maritime Labour Convention's recommendation that funding for shore-based welfare centres can be secured by a levy on shipping or public grants. A $50 levy on a container ship or $100 on a cruise ship would provide all the funding necessary to run a fully functioning seafarers centre. Such levies are minuscule sums compared to the $50,000, $60,000 or $70,000 daily tariffs ships pay to dock in Lyttelton. But the catch-22 for the crews wandering the streets of Lyttelton, deprived of a basic humanitarian right, there is no legal obligation for government, shipping companies, cruise ships, ports who make huge profits from shippings, councils who receive handsome dividends from their ports. There is no legal obligation under the Maritime Labour Convention to fund a seafarers centre. It's only a recommendation. And so generally, the recommendation is ignored, even though these entities profit considerably from a crude economic model that pegs the minimum wage of a Filipino seafarer to $4 New Zealand dollars an hour and sends all our exports and imports on ships crewed by a cheap labour source. It's a very, very effective economic pyramid. And when the Lyttelton seafarer centres ask for a few crumbs from the table, they are told to go to the Rata Foundation and have to head to Countdown for more sausages for a sausage sizzle. It's a catch-22. Actually, in the book Catch-22, there was a way out of the dilemma. To beat the catch-22 situation, you have to stop heeding the rules and make your own path that changes the status quo. Later today, Council will consider various options concerning the situation in Littleton. Some of those options recommended stick to the status quo, but there is also an opportunity to forge a direction that will significantly improve the welcome seafarers receive in your port. On behalf of these seafarers and cruise ship crews, we thank the Christchurch City Council for its integrity and compassion that you have shown since this concern was first brought to you, and for your wisdom in navigating a path forward. Kia manaki I te tanata rahi, I te tanata iti. No reira. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora. Look, thank you very much. I don't know if you have a copy of that, but I know that councillors would really value having a copy when we get to the point of considering the item that's on the agenda later.
I'm happy to supply that.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. Thank you. The next one is deputations by appointment, and the first of these is Extinction Rebellion Otatahi Christchurch. Julie Downard from the organisation to present on item 21, Climate Change Programme Update. Welcome.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Julie, and I'm presenting today on behalf of Extinction Rebellion, a global movement initiated by scientists in the UK, whose purpose is to get governments to act urgently on the ecological emergency we face. We appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Reporting on climate change is dominated by the IPCC. Most governmental bodies are guided by them. They are considered very conservative. Their October 2018 report gave us just 12 years to keep global temperatures under 1.5 degrees and avoid runaway, irreversible climate breakdown. But the report didn't factor in already locked-in temperature increases, assumed the use of carbon capture technologies yet to be scaled or proven, and didn't take account of feedback loops, which lead to abrupt climate change. It's been widely criticised for not conveying the true scale or immediacy of climate breakdown. One scientist even said, "To be a climate scientist is to be an active participant in a slow-motion horror story." Professor Schellnhuber says, "Climate change is now reaching the end game. The issue is the very survival of our civilization." So why is catastrophe so imminent? One reason is those feedback loops, such as the albedo effect. Ice has a very bright surface and so reflects heat from the sun away. As more ice melts, less heat is reflected away. Heat instead is absorbed by the dark water, and the water warms up. The less ice there is, the faster the heating, leading to exponential acceleration. The actual data suggests the Arctic will be ice-free in the next 5 years or so. Eminent climate scientist Peter Wadhams reports that an ice-free Arctic could add as much as 50% to the direct global heating effect of CO2. That is why people are calling it a climate emergency. We are facing a hothouse Earth. A 2018 study looked at abrupt climate change caused by feedback loops. The albedo effect is just one of dozens of such loops. Exceeding a loop's tipping point kicks off runaway effects and changes become essentially irreversible. Loops like seabed methane ice being released here could cause 5 degrees of warming alone. The risk is certain, the size is unknown, and the outcome is catastrophic. We're now at 1.1 degrees. The chance of us staying within 2 degrees by 2100 is just 5%. We're most likely to reach 3.5 degrees by then. This is unlivable. This is within the lifetime of children alive now. So what can we expect? At 3 degrees, the Amazon will start to burn. Forests will become net carbon producers, not the carbon sinks they are today. The forest becomes a savanna. This map shows cities at risk from sea level rise. 18,000 Christchurch properties are identified as vulnerable. These are people we know. 140 million people could be on the move by 2050 alone. These won't only be climate refugees moving from one country to another. They will be people on the move within countries, and that will include people right here in Christchurch. Food production will be severely impacted. Crops will fail on a regular basis. Many areas will cease to produce food at all due to flooding or desertification. Let's remind ourselves what it means if there's not enough food in your community. In Syria, 1 million people fled to the cities and then to Europe following crop failures. This caused social breakdown in Syria, political upheaval in Europe, a rise in fascism and racial hatred in both places. 1 million people. And we're looking at 140 million people by 2050. Then there's pollution and loss of habitat. Oceans that have a thriving marine ecosystem actually produce most of our oxygen and absorb significant amounts of carbon dioxide. Heating, acidification and pollution are creating huge dead zones in the sea. What will we breathe when those ecosystems are gone? There have been 5 previous mass extinctions. All but one were caused by rapidly rising CO2. In the Permian Triassic event, 97% of all life was lost due to runaway feedback loops that led to the gassing of the planet. The rate of CO2 emissions mirrors that of today. We're now in the 6th mass extinction. 60% of wildlife is already gone and 75% of insect biomass. Once the bees and pollinators go, along with the plankton at the base of the ocean food chain, we will face mass starvation. Professor Jem Bendell released a paper last year called Deep Adaptation. His conclusions are that societal collapse is inevitable and soon. Massive loss of human life is very likely, and human extinction is a possibility. We humans know how to harness renewable energy, discourage private car use, encourage sustainable and active transport use, and preserve our water purity. We have the technologies and the ingenuity. What we need now is political will and courage. We're here today to ask that Christchurch City Council declare a climate emergency and then act accordingly. World War II showed us how quickly we can mobilise with a serious threat, so we know we can do this. You are in a position of influence. Council has a big role to play in reducing carbon emissions and the burning of fossil fuels. Don't leave it to central government. I would like you now to take a moment to ask yourselves, what does it mean for me to be a good human? What does it mean to die without regrets? Will I be able to look my grandchildren in the eye and say, I did the best I could? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, I don't think we have a copy of the actual We'll make that available to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, we've got a very short time for one question. Vicky. You were sitting here at the moment.
The 5 things I would want done today is that the council declare a climate emergency, because the public doesn't understand the imminence of catastrophe or the scale, and that this will include social breakdown, and declaring a climate emergency gives you a mandate to act. I'm not going to go into the specifics of what you need to ask your staff to do, but your staff know what to do in terms of where your fossil fuel use, where New Zealand's fossil fuel emissions are coming from. Transport's a very big factor, and you have a lot of influence around transport in this city, encouraging people to use sustainable and active transport and discouraging car use. It's not quite 5, Vicky, but we want you to declare climate emergency, and we want you to declare climate emergency.
Thank you. Look, thank you very much, and we do appreciate the time and the effort that you've gone into making this presentation today. But I know that today is only one part in a journey that we're all on, and really appreciate you coming today. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you.
Good.
And sort of a related team now to come up, the Christchurch School Strike for Climate team, Mia Sutherland and Chiara. Oh, I'm not going to. Chiara, help me out to pronounce your name. I'm really sorry. Chiara Foley from the Christchurch School Strike for Climate team. Just to acknowledge that a number of us were in the square on the 15th of March receiving your open letter, and I have attached your open letter to my report this month. I thought that it would be another mechanism for us to acknowledge the extraordinary efforts that our young people are going to raise these issues and seek action. And I think what I really liked about the open letter was the very strong, personal responsibility as well as government responsibility that our young people are talking about. So it's not just central government, it's not just council, it's the people of New Zealand that really need to buy into this. So thank you very much. Far away.
So the short of it is, we really shouldn't need to be here. I should be in English class studying for an internal, and Mia should be in history. But we're not, and right now there's not much any of us can do to change that. So I hope that you are going to put your listening ears on for what we are here about to tell you about. I would expect you to have already considered the things we want to talk about, and if you haven't, I think now would be a great time to ask yourself why. So you know about the rather conservative 12-year deadline. Well, in 12 years, I will be 27. I hope to be studying as a social worker. I'll have travelled around a lot by then, and beginning to settle down, rent a flat with my friends, really beginning to find myself. And it feels weird what I'm about to tell you, because all of that depends on you. My job, my living situation, my family, it all depends on what you do in the next 12 years. Because as I'm sure you know, if we do not make drastic changes, what happens next will be irreversible. I hope we do the right thing, make the right choices, because I know you really are all doing a lot to fight this. But what worries me is, will it be enough? Enough in time to reverse what has already been set in motion by years of neglect.
So, as many of you are aware, we were part of the team running the School Strike for Climate on 15th of March. And the Christchurch school strike was picked up by a group of locals who care about the environment and care about climate change. We took action because we wanted to see urgent action from international, national and local bodies to ensure that we too can look forward to our futures and be confident that we will be safe. Students around the globe, from Sweden to Japan to Alaska to South Africa and here in New Zealand, took action and showed our strength. And I'm sure you won't argue with us when we say that something needs doing. And if taking days off school to do it is the only way to show this, then so be it. Decades before us, people were attempting to change the world. New Zealand has taken the first step on the difficult paths of many issues, including the Springbok Tour and women's suffrage, to name a few. Now it's our turn to take a stance against climate change and show that we won't abandon the future generations. As we were writing this PowerPoint, we looked on your website and it occurred to us that we don't actually know what you guys have been doing for the environment. And we were stoked to see that you have done an awesome job so far, and we just really wanted to congratulate you on the amazing steps that you've taken. Carbon neutrality by 2030, trialling of eco-friendly packaging at major events, and the LED streetlight replacement. It's really heartening to see you guys taking these steps, and we're really proud to live in this city and call it our home. However, you and I both know that the job isn't done. Issues within coastal sites, difficulties in low-carbon transport, and incentives to use renewable energy are still prevalent issues in Christchurch.
I think one of the main problems with this issue is it gets taken on a global scale, so we can't see the effects back home. My gran grew up in Christchurch, and she spent her childhood roaming the Port Hills with her friends, all Enid Blyton style, you know? And she tells stories about the pigeon caves and the devil's staircase and the tales they used to tell. And I am so glad that generations past I can follow in her footsteps, that those hills, bush and sea were preserved for my generation to enjoy all over again. And I think we all have something like that, some experience from our childhoods that we want to preserve. What's yours? What would you like to keep alive for your grandchildren's children? For over 50 years, we have known about the threat that climate breakdown poses to an existential threat on life on Earth. But we're not going to stand here and tell you the facts that you probably already know. If numbers were going to spur urgent action, they would have done so by now.
We are here to beg you to protect our futures. We are heading towards global catastrophe, and we don't need to tell you the facts to prove it. We should be enough to show you that this is an emergency. We need you to involve us in the upcoming climate change strategy action plans, so we are in the loop with what you are doing. We demand that you work with businesses to make it easier to implement sustainable practices and improve education on climate change for school-aged children. We are urging you to bring goals forward and aim for 2030. The slower you choose to act, the more you will be spending to fix it, and the more you will be putting us at risk.
We are your children, your grandchildren, and your future leaders. We have an urgent message and we need your help. The ball is in your court. You can save our futures. You know what we want. We want you to do all you can to protect Canterbury's environment and reduce carbon emissions so that we can grow up in a beautiful environment. Who are you to tell us through your actions that we do not deserve that? We need you to act with urgency. Goals should be pulled forward so that we can have a bright future that you had when you were our age. Thank you.
plenty of time for questions. So, Pauline.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for thanking us for the things that we are doing. And I just want to let you know that one thing we are doing that I'm really proud of is the Major Cycleway program that we're running, and it's a multi-million-dollar program to encourage people to use active transport like cycling and get out of their cars. It's a big job. We're about halfway through. There's 13 major cycleways that emanate from the central city out. So do you know about that? Yeah, so make sure you put that on the list of things. Yes. And also we do have our shared electric fleet program that so now our staff are able to jump in an electric car and buzz around rather than using a fossil fuel one.
Yeah.
So we are doing our best, but as I think you pointed out, it's got to be faster.
Yeah.
Are there any others?
I just want to know, would you like another day off school in terms of coming to the next Innovation and Sustainability Committee and actually talking through the things you want to achieve, perhaps with Julie?
That would be amazing. We would really appreciate any more involvement you can give youth in the climate strategy plan.
Okay, we'll get Joe to contact you.
Yeah, well, one of my suggestions was going to be when we get to the Mayor's report was, and one of the reasons I put the open letter on there was actually I think we could add a resolution to pass the open letter formally to the committee, and that would be the basis for getting a council report to the committee on your actual open letter, because I think there are some things in there that we could move on quite quickly. Yanni and then Phil.
Excuse me. Thank you for what you're doing and the message that you're bringing us today. I just wondered if you'd made submissions to the future urban development settlement pattern strategy.
I don't think we have.
No,
Right.
unfortunately.
So that's pretty much the fundamental document for land use planning that sets around our future in terms of sustainability. And yet, voices like yours, I'm really concerned, are not involved in that process. I see a sign behind you that says RMA equals climate change. And I just wondered how much involvement you've had in land use planning decisions, or how much thought you've given to Resource Management Act decisions around the issue of climate change, and how we could enable you to be more involved in those processes, which seem quite critical to a number of points that you've raised.
Unfortunately, we haven't been able to have as much involvement within council decisions as we would have liked, because we are school children. We are still going back to school after this and doing our internals and doing our internal work. So we do have to put the school strike on the back burner sometimes, just to make sure that we are actually going somewhere with our lives. So we really are trying to get involved, but it is hard as school children to
Find the balance.
Yeah, find the balance. And so as much help as we can get in being made aware, like you've made us aware, we're really grateful for, so thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe when it goes to the committee, we can get some advice around how we can enable
Phil.
and help.
Thank you. My question is sort of a little bit along the same lines Yanni was asking, and we don't want to take you out of school too long, but we've got a report on our agenda today, Climate Change Program Update, and it's about developing a strategy, and a group of councillors would do that. And there'd be a clear plan. We're pretty good at doing strategies, but it's the doing part and the implementation part that I'm wondering, in fact, how you as young people, representatives of young people, might want to be involved, and when would people like you, say, like to help shape that the plan, really, to come along and work with us as councillors?
I think that would be a really amazing opportunity. Thank you.
Tim, you've got 4 seconds.
Thank you. Look, the RMA is not designed for normal people, and it never was. For it's getting more awkward, and it's absolutely appalling, because it should be the core to what New Zealand and the world is really going for. But we also get lost in our own formats and our own bureaucracy, etc. So it is not as easy as it should be for anybody to come to and talk to council. So what I'd really like is, when you come to Vicky's committee, to let us know how we can make it easier for you and also all others to kind of make that connection with us and get that better involvement at the start rather than at the end. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because, you know, I almost want to invite you to help us write a let's make the RMA make sense to people. I mean, the RMA, you know, the tragedy of the RMA was that it was designed to establish national policy statements that would provide national guidance, and it has been an abject failure in that regard, and I'm afraid development interests have trumped, in a literal sense, everything else. So, look, thank you very much for your submission. I don't think you have to say that you've taken time off school. Education happens everywhere, and it's happened here today, and we've been educated by you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, and the last deputation by appointment is in relation to item 17, proposed temporary alcohol bans at rugby league playing fields for the 2019 season. Paul McMahon and Claire Rumba from the Community Action on Youth and Drugs. Welcome.
Kia ora koutou, Madam Mayor and councillors. My name is Claire Rumba and I work with Paul here on Community Action on Youth and Drugs, formerly known as CAYAD. CAYAD is a nationwide public health initiative delivered by 21 different organisations, including ours, St John of God Waipuna. Our role is to help communities to take action that reduces harm to young people from alcohol and other drugs. In the last year we have had a particular focus on alcohol, which included our former colleague Jenkins working with Wolston Rugby League to help them successfully move towards alcohol-free sidelines. With our Community Action Fund, we provided free hot drink vouchers on the sidelines, as well as some money for junior uniforms.
And we just want to commend Wolston Rugby League Club President Jamie Mather for showing leadership on taking on this big issue around alcohol on the sidelines, and the club members for taking up the challenge. They have a vision for a whānau first club that we are totally behind. And we also want to congratulate Canterbury Rugby League for their stance and for taking efforts to reduce alcohol-related harm in their code, and the council officers for coming up with a proportionate and practical solution.
So we really just want to ask you to adopt the recommendations of the committee item 17, which would be empowering the community to make effective change to reduce harm to young people from alcohol.
And in addition, it would be good to have a framework developed and support for other codes who may wish to take similar steps to make it easier for them. Rugby league's not the only sport that has a problem with alcohol.
Finally, we want to acknowledge here the partnership we have with Canterbury Community Law and Community and Public Health to help communities participate in the alcohol licensing process, which is significantly increasing community awareness and activity of alcohol licensing and regulatory issue.
Ngā mihi kia koutou katoa.
Kia ora, thank you very much. Has anyone got any questions? Tim.
Well, I totally support what you're saying. I mean, it was a very good presentation to the committee, and George and Canterbury Rugby League are doing huge amounts, and they should get all the support they can get. So, and thank you for your support as well to them.
Right. Anyone else? I think we'll probably get to the paper, and you'll find out that there's a lot of support for what you've said. So,
right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.